Hey guys, welcome back, or if this is your first time here, then just welcome. I'm Khan, and I ruin already ruined movies for you, with a play-by-play and some commentary. Hope you'll enjoy it. This week's movie is Girl on the Third Floor. It's available on Netflix if you'd like to watch it, but I couldn't recommend it less. Girl on the Third Floor starts with random shots of a decrepit house. There's not an order or reason to it. At one point, it cuts to the inside of a washing machine. CM Punk opens the front door of the house equipped with tools to fix the place up. There's a bunch of lingering shots of Punk's dog Cooper. Punk unpacks his tools and asks. CM Punk sticks his hand into black mold. There's not really any other context to that. He just kind of shoves it in, as one does, of course, when they see black mold. And you have to respect that kind of just go for itness. His dog searches the house. It finds this puddle of slime on the floor. He licks it. The movie tries to scare me with a POV shot from the inside of a hammered wall, and then the dog chasing a ping pong ball, but neither one of those things works. You could probably tell that just from hearing it out loud how bad of an idea it is. There's a home repair montage. Punk cleans up the dog slime. I'm glad we got some resolution there. I was really wondering what was going to happen to that puddle. Punk cleans up a mirror. He mops. There's a ring at the doorbell. It's this older woman who shows up with a tray of alcohol. Henceforth, we're going to be calling her Bourbon Pastor. It just makes sense. This scene mostly serves as exposition for him needing a change of scenery, and then her being a pastor. Her being a pastor is in no way relevant to the rest of this movie, just so you know. CM Punk wakes up. There is a phone call to his wife. We'll call her Tiger, because she literally works it into every interaction, Tiger. Tiger Wife doesn't think that CM Punk can finish the house by himself, and then she asks if he needs help. He reassures her that he's got it. He does some drywall. His drill stops working. He goes to check on it. The outlet is leaking white goo. CM Punk oversells like stepping on a marble. Like he steps on it, and then it's the most intense reaction you get from him all movie. He's just like hopping around on one foot like a cartoon character. And it's like marbles are round. They don't even hurt when you step on them. This guy in a suit shows up. When he comes there, he's like, how's a guy like you gonna survive here? There's no bars and no strippers, which our main character is apparently dependent upon. The guy asks, how can you afford the place? And then, like, two sentences later, he's like, the feds cut you a sweetheart deal. And it makes it sound like he knows about the main character's financial past, in which case he should know that he definitely has the money to do this. We'll get into that later. It doesn't really make sense, and this guy never comes back later on in the movies. Punk goes back inside. He hammers some holes in the wall. He finds a newspaper. He treats it like it's not important. He just kind of tosses it aside. And then he finds some like old panties in the wall. Like these things must have been 1908 just from the look of them. I mean, they look fresh, but like at the same time, definitely old. So he's like unfolding them and then like looking at them. And then he finds a veil. Doesn't really become anything. He's a little bit freaked out by finding it. So then Punk goes to the bar. There's a meandering bowling scene where he's standing there waiting for his ball to come back. And then he meets the bartender. He's the most interesting character in the movie, in my opinion. He does that thing where you just say something and then you qualify it two ways, no matter what you're talking about. Like, windows, they're either up or down. Hush puppies are hit or miss. Yes, the main character, if he's queer in a very straightforward way, he just says, hey, are you queer? And then the main character's like, what? And he's like, yeah, gay people survive better in that house. And there's also this like whole back and forth there where they're kind of like arguing about the like PC-ness of it. So he's like, I have a wife and kids. And he's like, I know gay people that have wives and kids. The implication here also that the house has some kind of preference for straight people. It's strange. I want to revisit this later in the video. We'll talk more about it. Punk does the horror movie house search for Cooper the dog. He's like walking through like, Cooper, Cooper. We get the weakest jump scare I've ever seen. This one was like an all-time low for me. So he's in the room and then he turns around and then the movie tries to do this like jump cut to make the dog look intimidating, but you could tell that the dog was just being a regular dog. I think they maybe got it to like hop up on its like back legs, but it scares Punk. And it's like you have a dog, so you should not be frightened by this at all. It's a totally normal interaction that he just completely oversells. The wife calls again. She asks if Punk needs help. We get a call forward to their friend Milo showing up. Punk ends the phone call asking for a boob peek and then looks at some daddy porn after he's done with the call. Cooper interrupts before he can get his rocks off. Cooper gets kicked out of the bedroom. CM Punk fixes a sink, tries to, and then he gets face full of like reddish black sludge. And then this girl shows up. She looks like Blake Lively, but she has like none of the personality or star power. So we'll just call her Blake Unlively. And she talks about how she likes it at his house. And throughout like their interaction, he's mostly just like, "Yeah, it's owned now. This is my place. I purchased this." Punk wipes the floor. He sticks his hand into a broken pipe and then gets marble. There's this jogging scene where Punk is just like running along to like WWE style music. I don't know what it is about bad movies and jogging scenes. Like you just gotta throw it in there. I need to know that your main character has hobbies and he cares about his cardio. Punk stands in front of a mirror. He tries to take a shower. The water doesn't come out of the shower for a second, and then when it finally does, it's the same white goo from the socket, and then he just ruins the curtains. He like swings around, just destroying everything. It looked like a hardcore match in there. Punk paints a wall, then he drinks a beer in the mirror, then he drinks a beer in front of a window. I feel like I'm writing some kind of weird Dr. Seuss book right now. CM Punk drinks a beer here. CM Punk drinks a beer there. CM Punk drinks beer everywhere. He looks at the bourbon pastor from his window, and then he paints some more. He sees Blake Unlively petting his dog. She asks him if he wants to smoke. Dad. Cut to them inside. There's a weird foundation shot where it's just like scrolling up this like stack of bricks for no apparent reason. They flirt, and then they start talking about the intricacies of French vanilla paint. He's like, "The wife picked it out. It's French vanilla." Okay, I'm just gonna like pause the whole thing right here. It's frustrating for me. Like the weird stuff has already started happening in this movie, yet this movie is just so focused on the home improvement aspect. Like I know which specific like brand of paint that they use, and I have no idea what's going on with these ghosts. And it just seems like the priorities here are totally skewed in the wrong direction. The roof to the room that they bang in drops out. CM Punk investigates it with like a flashlight. There's the camera like focuses on his butt, and it just like creeps towards him, but then it doesn't turn into like an actual jump scare or anything, so I don't even know why that was there. They kiss behind closed doors as WWE music plays again, and then Cooper like barks at them from the other side of the door. Cuts them kind of like hugging, like fully dressed. It kind of looks like a middle school play where like the two people definitely don't like each other, and they're just arm's distance. But their dialogue is supposed to convey that like they had sex. And CM Punk and his wife discuss their renovation over video call. Maybe they'll call the realtor, maybe they won't. Punk sweeps a floor. At this point in the movie, weird stuff has already happened, and I'm still watching like him just clean up this decrepit house. This is less like a horror movie and more like TLC at this point. Blake Lively shows up again. Punk passes on a repeat performance. But then he says, like, last night was super hot. But he says it with the enthusiasm of somebody who it clearly did not happen to. He may be safe from his house after all, based on the way he delivered that line. There's a mirror shot of Punk sleeping as a dark figure, like, walks past him. Tiger Wife shows up for, like, a PG-13 sex scene, but it's not Tiger Wife. It's Blake Unlively. No, it's Tiger Wife. No, it's a blonde woman with a gash mask. No, it's Superman. It turns out it actually wasn't any of them. It was just a bad wet dream. And he wakes up with a marble on his chest. So then he stares at a wall, and then he eats the marble as Milo shows up. They fix the roof. There's another mirror shot. We get some background about Milo working with Punk. Never comes up again. Not super important. They do some drywall. In case you were wondering how the home is going at this point in the movie, still making progress. They go to the bar. Turns out that the house used to be a whorehouse, and the bartender plays matchmaker for Milo, who it turns out is a feminist. We need to know that. Milo agrees to keep last night's drinking a secret as he enjoys a cup of coffee that was made by CM Punk's assistant, Blake Unlively. But wait, she's not his assistant, so Punk gets pissed and he goes in there and he threatens her like there's a WrestleMania coming up. Milo presses Punk about like what's going on between them because he kind of sees the threatening going on, and he tells him that he's pretty much going to tell Tiger Wife. Punk says, "If you can't handle it, don't be here when I get back." But he says it like there's a title match coming up. Never going to get sick of those jokes. Milo touches some wet paint. There's a long marble scene that lures like Milo to the basement. And when he gets down there, Milo apologizes to Blake Unlively. And for it, he gets uppercutted with a hammer. There's way too long of a scene of him crawling across the entire basement. I was seriously getting bored, and the span of time it was taking him to die, it was just like, just make it happen or don't make it happen movie. It's too much at this point. Gashface shows up at the top of the stairs. Blake Unlively is like, "Did you want to help?" But she clearly doesn't need help. He's already mostly dead at this point. I think she could probably even just like walk away from the scene, and I don't think he would make it. Punk does the horror movie walk again. This time he does it for Milo though, and then he sends him an apology text. There's another Tiger Wife phone call. Blake Unlively walks through the background whenever that happened. Punk plays it off like it's not a big deal when he's on the phone with his wife. And he's like, yeah, it's whatever. It's probably just like a shadow. And then the minute he hangs up with her, he goes back downstairs and he grabs like a screwdriver and he starts like looking through the house intently. And if you thought she was a threat, why wouldn't you just end the phone call the first time? He changes the locks and installs security cameras. This house, the value of it just keeps going up throughout this movie, despite all the stuff that's happening. The bourbon pastor shows up to talk about his feelings in the house. She says that houses have personality. This part doesn't really make sense in context of the rest of the movie. Next night, a marble rolls out of a suggestive looking hole in the wall, and then the dog follows it downstairs where he meets Blake Unlively. Punk awakens to dryer sounds. There's no real urgency when he's just like walking along. He just hears the thump, 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 whatever. Whenever he gets there, it kind of clicks for him. He tries to act sad. He opens the dryer and then he vomits. The security cameras just show a dog. I'm not sure why the movie introduced them if it wasn't going to do anything cool with them. There's been too many horror movies that have like used cameras successfully for you to just like bring it and be like, "There's nothing there." The cop leaves after Punk goes off on him, basically like saying, "You just stuck your head in here like a dipshit. Didn't really do anything. You didn't give him anything to work on." A marble rolls towards a seated Punk, and Blake Unlively walks into view. Punk apologizes for everything that happened so far, and then he offers her a gift in the kitchen. Turns out it's a meat tenderizer to the back of the skull. He wraps her up, takes her downstairs, and aggressively hurls lye at her. It's really petty how he does it, because it's like you've already killed the chick, but you're over here. He gets a call from Tiger. He's very calm at the beginning of the phone call, way calmer than you would think like a first-time murderer would be. But then whenever she asks about like Milo and potentially like what he was calling her about, he just like flips out and loses his shit. Then he goes back downstairs, but Blake Unlively is gone, and there's giggling throughout the walls. He goes upstairs, but it's an empty jump scare, and then he punches a hole in the wall to reveal a hidden child's bedroom. Punk goes downstairs, tears up the wallpaper, and then sticks the camera into the wall. He sees the girl with the torn up face. Punk starts hammering at the wall. The house has flesh and a heartbeat. It seems like the movie can't decide which way it wanted to go. Because, like, there's the parts where it's talking about the house being alive and the house does all this and that. But then, on the other hand, it seems like ghosts are doing almost everything that is happening. Punk punches more holes in the wall, and then Milo's face shows up and he's giggling. Punk calls the cops. I don't know what he expects them to do at this point. Blake Unlively texts him the middle finger along with the phrase, "Actions have consequences," which I think is kind of like strange arc words considering that you killed the dog, and I think all the dog did was follow a ball, which seems like the kind of thing you would want from a dog. But the girl with the destroyed face shows up. Marbles start to enter Punk's body. This is a pretty cool scene. Like, you get to see them kind of like go up his leg and stuff. He goes after them with a box cutter. Fade to black. Plot twist. CM Punk is no longer the main character of our story. Now, it's Tiger Wife. But don't worry, she also is renovating the house. She complains about some paint on the floor. Turns out it's a bloodstain. She starts wiping it. A marble rolls past. Tiger sees a hole in the wall. She reads the newspaper from earlier. I feel like we actually could have got this exposition, like whenever he first found the newspaper. The newspaper just tells us that the young girl was never found. Tiger wife goes downstairs. She finds a marble. As soon as she goes up, she runs into Blake Unlively. Blake oversells her assistant job. She really hams up this part and then ignores being told not to touch the baby. Tiger wife meets Bourbon Pastor. They discuss the marriage in the house. The house brings out the worst in people, she says, which doesn't really make a lot of sense because it seems like CM Punk was kind of a dick before he went in. Tiger wife goes inside and then she stares at a mirror. Tiger wife has a panic attack and then she washes her hands, finding black hair. There's an eye in the sink, which is a really cool scene, but it's way late in the game for her to be introducing stuff like this. Blake Unlively stalks through the house. Tiger Wife meets Bourbon Pastor, and then she changes her tune. Earlier, when she went to the Bourbon Pastor, she was kind of defending Punk, but now she's just like, yeah, he defrauded a bunch of people, and he cheats on me and stuff, so I think I'm done. And then Bourbon Pastor tells her that the house tests people, but that some people live there for years, which I find incredibly hard to believe because Blake Unlively just murdered that dog without hesitation. She gets told not to go back by the Bourbon Pastor, but she goes back anyways and looks for Punk there. She passes a bunch of random guys in suits and keeps getting taunted by Blake Unlively. She heads up to the third floor to look down on Blake Unlively, who is performing. I think it's important to note that like the title here makes no sense because if the main character is on the third floor and she's looking down at Blake Unlively, then Blake Unlively is not the girl on the third floor. Unless the main character is meant to be the girl on the third floor. Blake Unlively starts performing with Mass Punked. He keeps like snapping this like branch, and she like switches between like kind of confused and then like is like her emotional range. So the wife gets disgusted. She looks over to this young girl who's sitting on the floor. The masked man walks up to the young girl. He gives her some marbles. It's suggested that like this is like a sexual exchange kind of thing. Tiger tries to leave, but then as she's walking out, Blake Unlively comes like up the stairs and she starts explaining like how the brothel made more money whenever the dudes wore masks, in case you were curious. Blake Unlively died there, and then the girl with the messed up face died at the train tracks. I'm not sure why she's haunting this place and not like some phantom train cars. Blake Unlively tries to attack Tiger, but Tiger barricades herself into the room where Punk got took. And then marbles start to slide out of the closet. Punk shambles out of the closet and he's all cut up from the marbles that he was trying to dig out. He tells her that he can't leave because he made a mistake. I think the implication here is that he's already dead and he's now haunting the place. He tries to get Tiger to take him back. She doesn't. Whenever she rejects him, he takes the box cutter and then just kind of cuts down the front of his face. And then he pulls it aside, and it turns out that he was actually Blake Unlively this entire time. Tiger runs away, almost falling off the balcony. She like catches onto the edge. It's kind of a red herring at this point. It's strange that the movie has like multiple ghosts and like time travel and a house that has like a beating heart, and it still feels the need to do these like fake scares. Miles laughs at Tiger from the wall. Then the girl who has the messed up face, she like crawls out of a wall socket. Starts off as a pretty cool scene, but then she just gets bludgeoned immediately, and then it's like crushed, and then there's like weird black glue. I just don't understand how that works. Like, I thought the ghosts in this movie were sort of like immune to things. Like you could walk through walls, you could get hit in the back of the head with a meat tenderizer. But at this point in the movie, you can no longer get hit in the back of the head with the meat tenderizer because you're just dead. And Blake Unlively sings to the twice dead, messed up face girl. It's a thing. Bourbon Pastor summarizes that life is full of choices, and she didn't make the rules. But the weird thing is, like, the movie doesn't seem to abide by that rule on a consistent basis. Because, like, the dog didn't really make a choice, and it seemed like Miles was going to make, like, a good choice because he was going to tell the wife. and then the wife didn't really do anything, and then Blake Lively came at her with like a box cutter. Even after like Blake Lively was like, "Yeah, you made the right choice," she still tries to cut her. So super inconsistent. I don't know what the test is. I guess like the test is that you survived the ghost. Has nothing to do with morality. Tiger Wife goes into the house and then she like hammers the wall and then she finds the dead girl's body and then they perform the last rites on her. It's nice. We get some closure there. Uh, Tiger is being a mom. She leaves the room and then marbles start to come out of the vent and then Punk shows up on the other side of the vent to say something about how he's like a daddy. This movie is like a hybrid of like Tales from the Crypt and then like Home Improvement. This movie is like a Halloween episode of anything on TLC. This movie is like Basic Instinct if it had to get like a PG rating. This movie is like a parody of itself. This movie is like an experiment into whether or not it's actually possible for something to bore you to death. I feel like the only one who got tested during this movie was me. And I feel like I failed because I continued watching it. In modern horror, it's very important for you to establish your rules very early on. Or if you don't establish them, to have some consistent kind of through line in towards like what we're dealing with. Um, as horror movie fans, we like to kind of put ourselves into that situation. And a big part of that is knowing the rules of the universe. If I'm watching Friday the 13th, I know that I just have to escape Camp Crystal Lake. If I'm watching Nightmare on Elm Street, I just gotta wake up. In this movie, I don't know what I'm supposed to do at all. I don't even know what the real villain is here. Is the house just conjuring these ghosts and then just bringing them in? Is it anybody who dies here? But it's not because the one girl didn't even die here, and then she came here. Uh, she's clean, but now like the husband's not clean. Did they not do like a last rites on the husband? And why did the wife at the end of the movie decide to actually just keep living in that house? That's a really strange decision. Even even if they did like the last rites on the one girl or whatever, she still saw Miles' face in there earlier. And I just can't imagine that like she got through an entire remodel on this house and then he didn't just like poke his head out of the wall at some point to just giggle. Ghosts seem to really like giggling. Uh, it's not super clear what the test is because at first you're like, it's that you're supposed to stay faithful, but the main character just immediately loses that like right off the bat, and it seems like the ghost is more like jilted as an ex-lover than she is like offended that he didn't honor the sanctity of his marriage. There's also way too much focus on the building of the house. um, I don't know what it is with bad movies now, but it seems like they just have this interesting stuff that's just playing out in the background. We have this like time traveling house that has like this storied history of sex trafficking or whatever. And I spend most of the movie with CM Punk talking about paint. He literally watches a wall at multiple points in this movie. I just feel so insulted. So that was the movie. Those are my thoughts and a bunch of jokes. I hope you had a good time. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff. I'm out.